Yes, hello. Welcome to the Red Intermission. We are coming up quickly on the end of this story and on the reignition of the Van Horst's part of this long and winding tale. And so stay tuned. Not done having a couple conversations. I know I've said that a couple times, but a couple conversations yet to happen. There's going to be some interesting things coming. Very excited. So, hello. Hi, yes, hello. We are playing KULT Divinity Lost, the entirely unofficial, but if you ask for it, I might put it on Patreon monster hack, because Curtis deserves money for the hard work he does. And
True.
Yes. And this is Samara, who is playing the Red Lady. I am Ben. I tell horror stories. I am occasionally David. And I think that's pretty much it for tonight. Tonight is going to be an interesting episode. There's going to be some revelations, but also there is going to be confinement, which is a new challenge for the brains. There's going to be some confinement, specifically some mental health hospital confinement. It's far more One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest than anything reasonable, so it's good. It's rather uncomfortable. There's going to be a lot of body horror as usual, and
so much
body horror. It's going to be a really squicky episode. So I don't know. Welcome to the splash zone.
Yeah.
So,
the penultimate episode of the Red Intermission.
Yeah. There's this one, and then there's one more. And then we're going to take a little bit off because every single person involved in this game, except for Curtis, is going to go do a thing. We're all going to be at the same thing. So it's going to be difficult to run a game while we're all at the same thing. But that's it for now. I think that's pretty much the introduction for tonight. And I'm moving too much. I'm going to make Curtis stress the fuck out tonight. Yeah. Serpentine.
Where's the camera going, Curtis?
Now he's not going to talk for the rest of the night, and he's just going to drive to my house and beat me to death with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll never miss you, Ben. They'll never miss you. So I think that's generally all of the announcements for now. Yeah.
Game
time to get scary. Before we get scary, I do want to say that we were talking about how fun it is seeing all the names that we recognize filling the chat, and how we really enjoy all of your excitement and energy and all the silliness and yelling that you guys do. Makes me very happy, makes Samara very happy. So thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate seeing that people are looking forward to it. It gets us really excited to do the thing.
Yes.
So let's do the thing.
So let's do the thing. That's what I was going to say too. Good job, Jinx. So.
Oh. Dodge?
I don't know. Wrong system, I think. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
So. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Why don't you?
Okay.
Yes. We're going to build you all a mind picture.
Yes. David is asleep. David is off. David is in hibernation. David is in rest mode.
David is dormant.
David is dormant, yes. And he is currently in what used to be considered one of the surgery suites at St. Dymphna's Hospital, because there were extra tubes.
It still could be considered so, sort of.
Arguably, depending on how terrifyingly broad your definition of surgery is. And David is filled. Oh, by the way, brief pause. Medical horror is also going to be a part tonight.
Oh yeah.
So, late warning, but there. David is in a rig, in a frame. A bed frame has been turned on its side, and some sort of a chair, maybe a dentist chair or something like that, has kind of been jury-rigged to it. And he is resting, and in his neck, in his arms, coming out of his chest in a uncomfortably dense array of diameters and compositions are a number of tubes and wires, and some things have been attached to pumps. And David is wearing his illusion while he sleeps, but it is a thin one because no human would survive the things that are inside him right now.
Honestly, it's impressive that he's wearing the illusion at all.
Yeah.
And it's not pretty.
Mm-mm. David is visibly ill. His cheeks are sunken. His eye sockets, even though his eyes are closed, you can tell that they're a little recessed. Kind of the flesh of his face has been lost. He's lost some weight. His skin is a unhealthy pallor, and he generally looks like he is having a bad time, although he does look okay, as in possibly not dead. He looks okay for a dude that just got nuked. Yeah, on that scale, I guess he's fine. And while this barely technologically sound Rube Goldberg, if Rube Goldberg was a Cenobite machine, drains all of David's blood and filters out the rotten, tumorous things as the radiation and the damage from the atomic weapon, the test weapon going off, start to get filtered into his blood and then out. What is it being replaced with? Good question. But right now it is being pumped out, and it is emptying grossly, clottingly into several various sizes of glass jars. You are almost entirely certain that at least one of them is a jelly jar. There's a couple medical ones. There's probably a milk jug. It is clear that this is one of those pieces of technology where intent is far more closely connected to function than design. So, and
it's the thought that counts style, magic, tech.
Yes. Full marks for style.
Years from now, people will joke that rock stars have this procedure done. But right now, David is experiencing it for real, and it is not fun.
No, it is not fun. And write that down for later. That might have been some foreshadowing. So, David, however, is dreaming. And in dreaming, it is that he is remembering the experiences that got him hooked up to some Frankenstein's machine, pulling dying, rotten blood out of his inhuman body in a hospital full of hallucinogens and angels and torture. This internship escalated very quickly. So he thinks about driving up to the Sears house. He thinks about the red lady saying, "You look like shit." He thinks about angelic revelations and violence, and of a woman in green asking him about his ankles and pouring him lethal drinks and of trinitite and of murder upon murder and a building twisted in madness and then folded upon itself by the manipulation of it and drugs and so many things, and a bomb and pain and Saturn and the flesh of pigs and screaming. And just like the other several times that his mind has tried to go down this path in a slightly organized manner, it is the inhumanly human shrieks of the melted, molded pig beast thing that starts to cause his consciousness to flee memory and seek comfort in the real world. And his mind starts to very slowly rise from his, what should have been a recuperative sleep, but not quite as good as it could be.
The real world, on the occasions that he rises to lucidity and opens his eyes, is not much better than what he is seeing in his dreams, nightmares. He is suspended in some sort of makeshift standing rig attached to an operating table or a hospital bed or pieces of both. He has the vague sense that there are things spreading out behind him, that there is probably sigil work drawn on the back of the bed and the legs of the bed that are leaning it against the wall. And in front, beyond the apparatus that is filtering blood, ? There are, of course, the requisite candles and a larger sigil upon the floor if he can tilt his head enough to look down. And once again, it is that bizarre mixture of magic and technology that seems to be the Red Lady's forte.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit ooky spooky and a lot of bit just fucking weird. And of course, beyond the bounds of this particular operation, there are merrily growing mushrooms all around the walls, the ceiling, the floor. There are paths that have been carved, or not carved, as if someone has told the mushrooms not to grow here because this needs to be a path. And there are many of those going to and fro across the room. And if he happens to catch the Red Lady, she's always traveling one of these nice clear paths to and from his suite.
It sounds like from that description that this fungal growth has experienced a resurgence.
Yeah.
Has its nature changed at all? Originally, it was very much of the classic, not going to mangle the word, magic mushroom of the classic design. Has that changed at all, or is that still consistent?
Many of them are still there, but there are other mushrooms as well. There are some that are more iridescent, some that are more clearly poisonous, like poison dart frog level bright colors do not touch. There are mixtures of various fungi that one can only guess as to the medicinal, hallucinogenic, useful properties of them.
Yeah. Don't like that. Ben loves it,
No.
but don't like that.
Don't like that.
So David does open his eyes and accepts but does not think about the way they were when he focuses. And He blinks and adjusts and finds himself back in this rig where he is not comfortable, but he feels that he is better for the most part. And so he decides to wait a few moments for the red lady. If she's going to do the uncomfortable thing where she knows when he's waking up, and if she doesn't, he's going to just start disengaging himself from the apparatus.
It is only once he starts to disengage that there is a voice from somewhere outside of his realm of vision. There's not a lot of room still behind him, but it can be safely assumed that there are at least 1 or 2 doors somewhere in the wall behind him, because that's when she says, "Careful."
And the thing that I'm imagining, the thing that he pulls out of his neck is like that ridiculously long needle thing they put in your head from the Matrix, where you're just like, that doesn't fit there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he very carefully pulls it out, and she says, "Careful," and he looks at it like, how am I supposed to be careful with this? But he starts working on the other one, and the sound as it comes out is absolutely the sound of a knife being pulled out of a Kydex sheath, that kind of hard plastic on steel sound.
It's a sound that should be wet, but isn't.
Correct.
And David's can deal with that as David's see fit. But from around to one side, the red lady appears, and she has her cigarette holder. And in the end of it is some sort of hand-rolled thing. Does not smell like a cigarette. She makes no attempt to explain what it is, but she does gesture with it as she's talking. Well, you got that one out. Go on, then.
And he just starts pulling the one out of his off arm and then starts pulling them out of his other arm, very clearly like not wanting to deal with all the things that are embedded in his torso.
And all of the needles are too long. They are all the Matrix back the neck needle.
Yes. And some of them do come out with a wetter sound, but it isn't a fleshy sound. It is the sound like of pulling something out of a gasketed seal. So it's more of a sliding pop noise, as opposed to the ever so slight but audible sound of something being removed from flesh.
And she waits to see if he's going to ask for help with the numerous tubes of various sizes that are still coming out of his chest.
Yeah, I think probably what he does is he like gets one, realizes that there's like a locking mechanism, like a twist lock, and realizes that he can't get the right leverage, and looks at her and says, "Am I supposed to solve this puzzle, or can you help?"
Which would you prefer, Hunter Killer?
I don't ever tell anyone I said this, but I'd actually prefer your help.
Of course. And she walks over, right up. And at this point, because he's slightly elevated, she has allowed herself to appear shorter. Because it's less threatening. And she takes it and she twists it in just the right way. And there is that super satisfying pneumatic hiss. And when it comes out, the needle has retracted into it, which is a sense of he probably could have done several of those a lot easier if he knew the trick to it.
Yeah, probably. But, when has David ever done anything easier?
Of course. So, and she works quite deftly doing it on all the various ones that are still in his chest. And as each one comes out, she can observe how his chest is taking it, whether it is immediately covered by the illusion or whether there is a moment of seeing the metal underneath.
There's absolutely a moment of seeing the metal underneath. It looks like, how much can David control it? Not really certain, but it looks like at least his intent and his focus is on his face and his hands. Because you could draw the line of the dress shirt he wears and like go down a half an inch and draw another line. And that seems to be almost like an invisible barrier where the arcano-pneumatics of whatever he is.
It's like the first time you see the Borg Queen in First Contact.
Yes.
And she lets the illusion pass over these spots that she has now cleared for re-entry. And once they're all gone, she takes a step back so that he can remove himself from the rig if he likes, and is just rolling up the tubes and putting them over on a side, one of those rolling side carts full of supplies.
Yeah. He I think he hung his shirt up before all of this started. And so now he's kind of looking around trying to decide if that shirt even should be saved or if he just needs to find another one. It probably.
How much of that shirt still exists?
Probably
it's
not
torn
very...
and bloody on top of being irradiated.
Yes. And fun question. So because he was so tired, the shirt was mostly toast, but he did like hang it by the collar on something. Because for David, ritual is very important. But when he did that, do the mushrooms and other growths around it respond to that bloody irradiated
yes, they do.
Shroud of Turin?
Some of them shrivel and pull away as if frightened. Others lean into it as if curious. And so by the time he goes to try and take it, especially the top where the hook was, has a number of mycelial friends who have come and wrapped themselves around it. And it almost looks like certain mushrooms are trying to pull the shirt into the wall, whereas other ones have retreated. And you can see, the way a plant leans towards the sun, and you can see that tilt. They have leaned away. Their roots are still in the right place, but they're going, oh, no.
Yeah. David sees that and kind of puts his hands on his hips in a very like farmer/mechanic sort of way and just stares at the entire arrangement and takes it in and just seemingly directed at the fungal growth as a unit just kind of goes, yeah, fuck you too, buddy. And
I bought you another one.
Good. Because I don't think that one's getting laundered by the mushrooms.
No, I would leave it there. They can deal with the toxins.
No, okie dokie. That's great. That's super great.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling like I was inside the range of a test detonation and then fought a pig monster and then a crab monster and then a something else monster and then a guy. And then I melted all the paint off the back of a truck and then you took all of my blood out with knives and tubes.
Gosh, it's been so quiet here without you.
I'm terribly sorry to disrupt your meditative comforts.
It is such a place of contemplation, is it not? I'm so pleased you found this. Thank you.
You're welcome. It does certainly give you a lot to think about.
Yes. And so many ways in which to think about it.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to our next task? Or are you hungry?
I should be hungry.
You don't have to be.
I know. No, I'm not hungry. What are we doing?
Wonderful. We're picking up rocks and putting them down again. You like when I give you simple explanations and I give you a simple explanation and this is the face I get.
That sounds a lot like burying teacups, Electra. What's the catch?
Oh, it's Ellery today.
1,000 pardons. It sounds like burying teacups, Ellery. What's the catch?
Those rocks will help me create a portal.
A portal?
Yes.
Fine. Okay. Fine.
Wonderful.
Fine.
And she leads the way out of the suite and through a side room where there is a whole new suit for David. And respectfully, she continues out the door and then waits there if he would like to change.
Okay. He does. Well, I think
it is
there's almost
his exact sizing specifications.
Yeah.
Like he took it to get tailored himself.
I think he probably ended up taking some kind of a shower before he got plugged in. So he kind of sighs, heavily rubs his face, knows it's going to fit, hates the fact that it's going to fit, and puts on the last suit he'll ever wear.
There are even a selection of ties in different colors, depending on if he wants to accessorize.
I think he does. I think the ritual of wearing a suit is something he hasn't had since shortly before the Van Horsts disappeared. So I think he feels, in David's mind, he feels like putting a suit back on feels like getting ready to find the Van Horsts and bring them home.
Mm.
You know, one mustn't welcome the master home in your night clothes, sort of.
Of course.
Yeah.
So what color tie?
I think he's gonna go. Well, what color is the suit? What did she pick for him? Black all the way down, or is it black with a white shirt?
Oh no, black on black.
Black on black.
We remember that part is essential.
Yes. Then I think he actually goes for a splash of color and picks like the goldenrod / sunburst yellow tie. It's a very Elvis color.
Mm-hmm. It's a paisley, if you look closely. It's a very subtle design, but it is a very pleasant paisley.
I think he finds it entertaining.
Good.
So he ties the tie with the absolutely practiced autopilot precision of someone who's tied a tie around their own neck for decades. Fixes it. Runs his hands through his hair and just kind of gets himself situated, realizes he needs a shave and decides he'll do it after he picks up heavy rocks and puts them back down. And then goes to find the Red Lady.
She is waiting for him right outside. And she gives him a sort of an appraising look, and then continues down the hallway past what was once the front desk and out the front door towards his car. She does not make him hold the door open. She gets in herself. And once he is in as well, she says, "My house."
Alrighty. And he drops the car, starts the car, drops it in drive, and heads to St. George, Utah. It's only
The
a
house
couple
looks
hours.
the same as it always has.
Yes. However, in difference to in continuing the transitional way he parks, he actually essentially drives right up to the front of the house.
Further than last time.
Yes. And he kind of brings it up to the house and brings the car around in that open space and backs it up on the assumption that wherever these big rocks are going to be are probably in the house. So he aims the trunk at it.
And she gets out and she starts walking around the back of the house.
Okay. It is clear that David is making like a conscious effort to be irritated by the things the Red Lady does, because by all rights, he should be used to it. But there is a part of him that's just like, no, I am actively choosing to be annoyed by her. Like, this is like, it is necessary that I be annoyed by her bullshit. That's just part of the requirements. So.
And behind her house, there is a lovely, elegant looking garden, perfectly normal. Certainly not an illusion to cover much weirder things. And there is a stone path that leads away from the house towards a hill that is in back of the house, and a copse of trees on that hill. These will not stay in my fucking ears. Sorry, I have to adjust my whole head every 5 minutes. They're great when they work, but they want to fall out, which is very irritating. And in that copse of trees, there are standing stones. 2, 3, 4 stones. 3 stones on the ground, taller than she is, wider than she is, certainly heavier than she is, and 1 larger slab across the top. It is a full-on dolmen, just sitting there in a copse of trees in Utah.
And David turns and gives her almost a glare and says, "I'm strong, but I'm not that strong."
I'm aware. Give me a moment. I've been working on this for several days, but I needed to be here to finish it.
Okay.
And she walks into the center of them and places somehow, somewhere, she pulled out a pomegranate. And she puts it on the ground, right underneath these stones. And she comes back out to stand next to him. And she holds her hands out as she often does. Whether it is fully necessary to do that full gesture or it's just dramatic flair has never been clear. But she finds the right tone that is far deeper than her vocal cords should be able to make. And from the pomegranate, it splits open at the top, and red vines crawl out of it and start to move towards the 3 stones that are embedded in the ground. And as she's doing this, and that basso hum, she snaps in front of David's face. So he looks at her.
Yeah. Annoyed.
And as soon as he looks at her, she stops and goes, "There." And when he looks back again, this dolmen is about the size of a park bench.
Fine.
It's all a matter of perspective. I needed you to
Sure.
change your perspective.
And that just goes into the pile of things he refuses to figure out.
Yeah.
And he, with a grunt, picks up one of the smaller but still fairly large stones and starts taking them to the trunk.
Mm-hmm. And after a moment of thought about whether he's going to be stuck in the 50s, whether it would be funny, whether it would irritate him, whether it would emasculate him, she picks up one of the second rocks herself.
Yeah. When David puts his rock in the trunk, he turns around in that very classic, like, smack the dust off the hands back and forth, turns around, sees her carrying one of the rocks, goes through a fucking face journey. And mostly, like, it's not even as much emasculation, because even though David is still trying to figure out what the hell is going on with himself, he is very aware that the Red Lady is not a human. So it's that just like, really? Yeah, why am I not surprised? Okay, she just, I don't know, whatever. She wanted my help. She wanted company for the drive. I don't give a fuck. I don't care anymore. I don't care. And just walks past her and gets the next one. That absolutely just like, fine, yes, fine, sure, great, fine, whatever. Everything is terrible. I'm picking up the next rock now.
And she follows him back and picks up the last one, because there were only 4.
Yeah. And he puts it down, does a little bit of quick rearranging in the trunk, and the trunk, I imagine, is probably, yeah, this is an incidental lowrider.
Yeah, we are low riding our way back to Vegas.
Yeah. And she puts the last one in, and like she's seen before, she sees David gearing up to say something shitty, and then checking himself and choosing not to say it. But it's definitely that, like, and just, is there anything else?
Coffee?
Sure. Are you moving? Is this it here for here, or?
Not completely.
Okay.
I've grown a certain fondness for this place, but it is no longer as necessary as it once was.
I don't know how important the moving the big rocks thing is in the Angel neighborhood, so I just had to ask.
It will be quite important.
Okay.
It will get us the last thing we need.
Sure.
So coffee?
Sure.
And she heads inside and she uses her trusty coffee maker and she makes them some coffee. And she even has some to-go mugs, because I assume they had those in the 50s.
At the very least, a stainless steel thermos with the lid.
There we go. Yes, there we go. And so she takes coffee to go.
David actually has an honest to goodness moment of like innocent memory smile when he sees that thermos. Like, there's definitely something. Rarely does David have a memory that isn't also a flashback, that isn't trauma related. So there is a few moments in this mountain of transformative misery that has been his life lately, where he is reminded of something that involves an old enameled dwarf flask thermos with the screw-on lid. And he kind of like, probably for the first time, the Red Lady sees the Davids that could have been. You know, just a couple of kids trying to exist, trying to make their parents happy, you know, trying to find their place in a world that is rapidly going mad. And he just kind of smiles at it for a minute, and then she can watch the memory sour. Like in real time, she can watch things creep in around that memory and start to taint it and damage it. And David can feel it too, and she can see him like put it away. And he just like holds the thermos at her. He kind of like waves the thermos at her like, well, we've got it, so let's go.
Do let's.
And then they very slowly and carefully, accelerating not at all and avoiding all potholes, take twice as long going back to Las Vegas.
Yeah. Conveniently, neither of them have to take potty breaks, so it's just kind of, you know.
Yeah.
And to make things easier when they get to the hospital, the Red Lady finds a gurney. And so they can stack the stones on the gurney and transport them that way rather than carrying them by hand all the way through to what she has discovered is a small central internal courtyard of the hospital. It's not big. It's not pretty. But it does have access to open air at the top, which is nice.
David kind of like looks up, looks around, and is just actively choosing not to ask. Like there's just a lot. It's that just like, if you've ever seen someone in sales and the person they're in the middle of making a sale to starts weirding out, and they're just like, just let it float past you. It doesn't affect their credit rating. Just make the sale, make the sale. That is David's face. That is just like, just let it roll off you. It's not necessary. Just let it go.
It's fine. It's fine. What's funny is that it's not even quite as strange as he thinks it is. A lot of hospitals have interior courtyards. It's where the doctors and nurses go to have smoke or have lunch, or sometimes it even has a playground. But in this instance, it is just so surreal that it's like, sure, this is just as surreal as everything else I've been dealing with in this horror building, this mushroom madness building.
It's the fact that he might see the sun. Like there's something sealed off about Saint Dimphna. So he's like, I am going into the building-sized box of horror, and then I am going to go out of it. But this idea that some of it is open to air, that he could be standing in Saint Dimphna's and looking up and get rained on, or hear Main Street, or see the sun, that perturbs him more than other things. Because David likes his environment like he likes his brain, compartmentalized.
Oh, bless you, Davids. The Red Lady gives him instructions on how to place the stones so that they are correct and will stand on their own power. And underneath it, she watches as one little mushroom pops up, some sort of strange iridescent color that might be related to purple, and it looks as if it's waiting for instructions.
I have an aside from the props department. Is this the same iridescence as the Metropolis medal, or is this a separate iridescence?
Strikingly similar.
Okay.
Strikingly similar.
The props department heaves a sigh of relief.
There can only be so much iridescence in this weird fucking story, Samara. Get your shit together.
I just imagine that entire props department being like, "You don't make us source this again. You don't make us source a different one."
Not again, please. No, please no. We've gotten you so much paint. God damn it. She crouches down, and she's like 10 feet away. She's closer to the door leading back into the building. But she crouches down and she sort of whispers to the mushroom in that strange language that David recognizes but does not understand. And it looks as if she is coaxing it to make a decision.
Okay.
And then she stands up and looks at David and goes, "Easy." And waits for him to look her in the eye.
And he does, essentially instantly, because he just wants her to be done.
And the audience might see a strange dolly pole or a cool camera trick where the camera pans around these rocks that look the same size, but by the time you see the Red Lady and David again, they look much smaller in comparison. What David sees is the same thing David did or didn't see earlier, which is suddenly the rocks are big. Big enough for a person to easily walk underneath.
Yeah.
They take up a good chunk of the courtyard at this point. They are dead center. It now looks like a Neolithic portal to Avalon in the middle of this hospital ground.
David is just like, there's something about perspective shifts that bother him. Like, gribbly monsters, whatever, blood and guts, whatever, he can handle most of it, or he can disassociate his way through enough of it. But it's when when the visual rules change, that's the thing that actually apparently really gets to him. And so this is a moment, just like several moments at the MK Ultra safe house, where he just, you watched his brain convulse in rejection at what it sees. And he has that moment where he has to fit the concept in his brain as much as we have to fit the rocks in the courtyard. And he just,
how's he feeling about it?
He's all right. He purses his lips. He makes a face about it, and it's gonna bug him. Like, he hates it a whole lot. I mean, it's absolutely a thanks I hate it moment, but
reasonable.
Yeah. So he says, "Great. Bird feeder next."
And she ignores his comment and walks over and puts a hand on the stone, like greeting an old friend. She's just happy and comforted to have this structure here.
All right.
And finally, she turns back to look at him and she says, "Now we can acquire the final thing we need to be able to bring our Van Horsts home."
Okay.
This will be a portal. It now connects this structure, St. Dimphna's, which is now mine. I have claimed it as my own, to other such places that I have so claimed.
All right.
And the last thing we need is a Bethany. So let's go to the Bethany store.
David's entire body freezes. And when I mean freeze, I mean measurable on the atomic scale. Motion ceases. And even though there is absolutely nothing physical happening, the panic, anger, confusion, all wrapped up in David's hunter-killer urge to do violence against everything that annoys him, like it crackles around him almost audibly. And he stays locked up for a good 15 seconds as he processes that sentence. And okay. Do they take cash?
I don't think we'll need any.
Oh, you have, okay, great. You've got a tab. Cool. You've got a Bethany tab.
I have a robust line of credit with this establishment, yes.
You know that if you try to do anything like this to my Bethany, I'm going to have to come at you with everything I am, right?
Why would I do anything like this to my Bethany?
I don't know. I'm just reminding you.
Of course, Hunter Killer. I would expect nothing less.
Okay.
Your loyalty is one of your most charming assets.
Sure. All right, let's go to the fucking Bethany store.
And she, on the large flat plane of one of the standing stones, she starts to, as if she has finger paint, start putting designs on the stone. And though she has nothing on her fingers, what she is drawing glows back at her. Like every fantasy movie with glowing designs on rocks, let's be real, it's a dope ass aesthetic, and so we're using it. And the more she works on it, although she's working on different parts at different times with her two hands, the more it comes together, it has a central line of symmetry. And the more she works on it, the more it looks like a Rorschach test. And what I want to know is, what does David see?
He in this moment, with the things that are on his mind, he actually probably sees one of those ones where like two images flip back and forth, like the two people in the vase sort of thing. And the two images that keep flickering back and forth in his mind is, one is a Bethany harmed and exsanguinated and eviscerated and surrounded by blood. And the other one is the vague shapes of the Red Lady and David abandoning the illusion and coming at each other. Because he's really just, she's doing finger paints and he's like, I'm gonna have to kill her. She's gonna do something like this to my Bethany and I'm gonna fucking kill her, and I'm just gonna absolutely go over the table at her. And you need to make peace with the fact that you've worked with her for a little while and that you guys have created something that could be remotely resembled a friendship. But if Bethany blinks at her twice, you need to peel her fucking skull out of her head. Like, you just, how do you kill an angel? How do you kill a red lady? Do you chop off her head? Does it matter?
And in the 2 or 3 seconds it takes for these multiple thought processes to go through his head, she has finished, and she puts her hand in the very center of the design and just sort of concentrates for a moment. And the air within the stones ripples. That's sort of the heat coming off of asphalt, but only within the space of what is now clearly a doorway.
Mm-hmm.
And she walks into that rippling air and vanishes.
David sighs. It is possibly the most like illusory thing that he has done all day. David sighs, like he full body sighs, like he throws his arms down and his shoulders slump in and his head drops, and he why gods it. Like you can clearly see like just like the this. Why for do you do these things to me? And like just like this fucking broad, and then in that mind state walks through the portal just like mad. But let's talk about this portal for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
There was another time before there was this time. There was a time when all the pieces of a great and terrible existence were boundless and not designed for human habitation. And in those places were beautiful, terrible things that we lack the comprehension to understand. Now, when I say beautiful, terrible things we cannot comprehend, I do not mean a dragon squid thing. That's just a critter. I mean infinitely fractal trees. I mean mountains that shrink when you get closer. I mean oceans that drown you because when you put your face in the water, you are underwater, but when you pull your head out, your head is back under the water. And as soon as you touch the water, there is no out of the water. And then there was to say there was a taming is the wrong word. It was more violent. It was more terrible. Pieces of this beautiful, terrible place were suborned and subdued and brought to heel and mangled into a shape. And that shape is sometimes called Elysium, or the Lie, or Earth, or what we consider it. And in and around this mangled piece of something greater, there are fragments of those ancient unspeakable things, and parts of them were made into machines of control. And since the Red Lady was there when beings beyond our comprehension broke Gaia's back and beat pieces of it until it gave up and turned into something else, she remembers the machines of subjugation, and the levers of control, and the chisels, and the knives, and the paintbrushes. And these stones are some of those tools. And so, Red Lady, when they travel between places, what is it like?
On the one hand, it is simply like stepping through a door. The experience is a fraction of a second from one place to another, as if these two spaces are physically right next to each other and you can walk from one to the other. But beyond the illusion, it is infinite. And it is a view of something that no longer is. It feels for a moment like the before. It feels endless and inexplicable and beautiful and dangerous. And if you concentrate on one part of it too long, you will go mad. But was that just a split second, or was that an eternity? Was that falling through space and time and infinity, or was it walking through a door?
Why not both? You can have both.
Why not both? ¿Por qué no los dos?
Yeah. Rolling an 18, David handles that fairly well. Yeah.
Well done.
I don't think, but it's not a healthy well done.
Oh, no.
Like,
No.
He isn't like, my mind has endured the rigors of this experience unharmed. He's like, nope.
Time for another box.
We're just going to disassociate that so hard it leaves our brain physically.
David always makes me think of that one moment in the first Bill and Ted where one of them says to Billy the Kid, "You are handling the oddities of time travel with the greatest of ease."
Yes.
And that makes me think of David, but much less healthy.
Oh, no. Yeah, this is super duper not healthy. Yeah, David is unwell, folks. Disassociation is actually not a useful tool for coping. He's, you know, when the only therapeutic skill you have is disassociation, everything looks like a nail.
And that's something for David to work on in therapy.
Yeah.
In therapy, which he will never get.
Never, ever. Oh, well. I'm glad he's fictional. I'm glad he's not me.
So, on the other side of this infinite nothingness of a portal, they arrive in a basement.
Cool.
It is a basement tall enough to have this full set of stones in the basement. Their bottoms disappear into the floor in what must have been one hell of an operation to secure them in the, is it dirt? Is it concrete? Unclear. It's a little dark.
This is almost like they had to put these stones in and then build the building around them.
Potentially.
Or put the building
if
on top of them.
David thought a bunch of stones in the courtyard of St. Dimphna's was hard to comprehend. This is like finding Stonehenge in your attic.
Yeah. He looks around. Is it lit down here?
Very dimly. It appears to be like there are high, very small windows, as in that's ground level. And so they have those little basement windows. Everything else is underground.
David's eyes reflect light like a cat's or like a rifle scope, like the looker througher of the sniper. Thanks, Ben.
The looky bit.
Yeah. And he pauses for a minute and then opens his mouth and inhales that big, full sensory gust. And stares at the red lady as he processes what he's scenting in that almost accusatory.
What's he scenting, Ben?
He is, well, the first thing he's scenting is the building. So he's scenting age and brick and old pipes and a little bit of mildew. And then he smells human. He smells a lot of human, too much human. The sweats and the secretions of many people over many years, the way that only a place that has been lived in for a very long time, and most especially not particularly well cleaned, creates a particular funk. And he smells metal, and he starts by smelling the metal that's part of the building. And then he looks at the red lady. He looks at the red lady and says, "I smell blood." And we'll find out why after we come back. So we will see you in a minute. Hi, yes, hello, welcome back. Here's where everything gets terrible.
Yay!
Yes. So as we return, let's as is becoming a little bit of a habit, which I actually find very, very enjoyable, as we do a little bit of cinematography. Let's float above this location for a minute and let's talk about this building. Let's talk about the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. It is a vast, wide building, one of these long hospitals, several stories high with many buildings behind it in a small town of West Virginia. It began construction in 1858, and I'm sure the Red Lady could tell you something about that. And it opened for patients in 1868. And I will leave you to do research on what the mental health field looked like in the late 1800s. But I will tell you on no uncertain terms that it was a hellscape of good intentions. Well, some good intentions, some monstrousness. People have, in our world, in a place where the Van Horsts and the Red Lady have not possibly irrevocably changed things, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is one of the most thoroughly haunted places in America. As Henry Rollins would say, the vibe is wild. It is a monument to deliberate suffering. And within its walls, hundreds, if not thousands of people have endured conditions and treatments unimaginable. And as the camera goes down through the front door, through that little front area past the entrance desk, doing a little bit of the Evil Dead cam. Through the hospital, we see things getting worse. Too fast for you to see, but too fast for you to comprehend, but you can see things getting worse. The red in the blur continues to increase. The screaming gets a little bit louder and the rushing noises. There are shapes that do not look quite right. There are blurs and too many of these and not enough of those, and more splashes of red and flickers of white linens. And then our viewpoint clambers down into the basement and finds the Red Lady and David once again. And David has said, "I smell blood. A lot of blood."
And for once, the Red Lady is taken by surprise, and that ever-present smile vanishes from her face. And she whirls around in this room that is a basement, but also, if you look closely, it is covered in runes and hieroglyphs and cuneiform and sigils, and the wall just ever so faintly, if you look ever so closely, some drawn in dust, some made of cobwebs, some carved, some painted, but all across the basement are signs that this is the Red Lady's place. And she picks up her skirts to move more quickly in that classic Victorian motion. And she moves towards the basement stairs and stalks up them to the top.
In relation to your holding area, let's use the worst possible terminology. In relation to your holding area, where is the basement? Is this entrance in the center? Are they separate?
I think this particular entrance is near the center.
Okay.
I suspect that the basement runs the length of the building, but is also split up into smaller areas. Like, nothing is completely closed off, but there's a boiler room, laundry room, all of those other facilities, and also whatever this smaller room is. It's probably connected by one long hallway and it's split up into the smaller things, but this particular entrance is very close to the center of the building.
Okay. This has always been a sensory assault. There is no getting around the nature of what you are doing here. However, that assault has changed. There is a rich vermilion iron in the air, the kind of thoroughness and depth of blood stink that only unsettling amounts of surface area provide. And there is the unmistakable wet umami smell of human organs being pulled out and ruptured, and the smell of water, as possibly some of the other rooms have failed. There is water dripping on the floor from some of the pipes. There has been a breaking down here, and there are screams, but they are the wrong screams. There is a hymn that should be sung here, and it has been rewritten into another song. Instead of the howls and repetitive mumblings and laughs and shrieks of those who are kept here. There are now screams of true fear and pain and active harm, and underneath it, a predatory ululation that is being ripped out of a far too recognizable throat, in as much as the noise is not.
There should be the adulation of the mad in the air. And instead, the Red Lady, in the most human David has ever seen her, it looks like the blood has drained from her face. Whatever is happening here, it is not what she expected to happen. And what David can tell he is about to see, under different circumstances, he would have already ripped the Red Lady's head from her shoulder, were it not for her own horror. And she bursts through a door that locks from the other side into the main foyer and whips her head around, listening, and says to herself aloud, "No," and takes off at a tear down one of the hallways. She is actually, with her own 2 feet, skirts in hand, running.
David follows her for now, and the tension, and it's not anxiety. What his readiness to inflict violence, that cousin of anxiety, of willingness to hurt anything and everything around yourself, is almost palpable on him. And she can hear behind her David's scenting hunter-killer pants as he takes in more of the smells, and she knows that she is on a timer, because at some point what he is smelling will start to make sense, and then this will be a much bigger problem. When she goes through the hallway and bursts through the door, she can already see the splashes of blood and the handprints on this main room, and some footprints left in blood and filth. And there is a unrecognizable piece of metal that almost, no, yes, that is a piece of rebar, something that has been pulled from the wall and has been used to stab something 10, 20, a dozen times. There is a piece in the wall about that big where it's just been chiseled at. And there are fragments of flesh and hair and bone pounded into the brick. But there is a glossy, indistinctness to some of the fleshy remains that is a ominous sign. The scent of blood and screams is clearly coming from one direction. Now in this hallway, there is a great deal of lunatic asylum in that direction, but the sounds are clearly going in one way. But the scents are coming from the other. So, Red Lady, do you wish to inspect the mayhem that has already been wrought? Or do you directly wish to go investigate and probably destroy the source of this attack or debacle?
She stops at the sight of that indentation in the wall just long enough to reach out and almost touch it. And her hand is shaking, or at least that's what it looks like within the illusion. What it looks like underneath, David can't see. But all of her illusory body language is that of abject horror. Someone has gotten the drop on the Red Lady in a big way. And it takes her just a moment of looking at that before she continues down the hall towards the source. And now her movements are less human. She's still hitching up her skirts and running, but there is less of that natural body motion in that run. It's like watching a predatory bird taking flight. It's
a little bit of
speedy.
that cinema trope flicker.
Yeah. Because the horror has passed and now she is also angry.
As you accelerate into a murderous pace, you start to outstrip David, who has yet to grasp exactly what's happening to him. This is still translating mostly as a violent disaster, clearly a problem, but it looks like just violence to him, and he is so thoroughly desensitized to it that he lacks the context, to know why this is such a problem. But even as she sprints forward, she can hear the confused contemplative noises that he's starting to make. There is a questioning lilt to his breathing. He is starting to figure it out. And that starting to figure it out comes to a head. Red Lady, how about you roll combat? This is a notice something roll.
Sure.
So as combat is generally the sins of the flesh.
Huh. That's an 8.
You did not.
That is an 8 total.
Okay. So focused on stopping what is happening around you, so tunnel visioned on this intrusion, this violation of one of your sanctums, that you absolutely do not notice the easily identifiable body in the corner. And any chance you had of spinning the situation or revealing the situation in a way that you wanted to disappears when David's broken, inhuman, carbide crackle voice says, almost as a sob, Bethany? Bethany? The sound of 2 knees hitting brick and the rasp of claws as David finds a murdered Bethany on the ground behind you. What do you want to do? You can lose time trying to spin this with David, or you could keep moving forward. But
she keeps moving. She pauses for a split second and makes that decision to keep moving.
Okay. As she moves forward, she can hear the David start to shatter as the voices start to twin and echo with each other. And there is a radio crackle adjusting the dial sort of noise as his internal thoughts start taking on distinct threads within themselves. As yes, no, yes, no, yeah, no, look, hair, wrong, skin, wrong, scar, missing, yes, but is, why, how? And David is having an extremely dangerous meltdown as you leave him there with the body of someone he is unhealthily committed to.
And it's not too much further that she finds another one. And this one inexplicably is still breathing, if you can even call it breathing, that wet, wheezing, sucking sound. Mm-hmm. And at that point, she comes to a stop and drops to her knees and cradles the mangled form of Bethany in her arms. And whispers to it. Whispers sweet words of comfort to the dying and maybe an apology, but no one gets to know that except Bethany.
Their response is equally unknowable, but for different reasons. Her hand, well, what's left of it, it's 2 fingers and part of a thumb and some abraded flesh, reaches up and tries to touch the red lady, and she starts to cough, and the blood starts to aspirate out of her mouth, and then flesh, clean new skin, pale blue veined, starts to force out of her mouth as if she's regurgitating another being. And eyes and teeth and fingernails and hair start to just kind of manifest underneath this lump of undifferentiated tissue as this Bethany turns itself inside out and abandons its mortal shape. And as this happens, let's roll magic to see if we can get a grasp as to what exactly is happening.
Sure. There we go. That's a 22.
There we go. That's more gooder. Okay, timeout. KULT Divinity Lost approaches mental health from a specific storytelling angle. Part of the conceit of KULT Divinity Lost is that the further your character travels from what could consider traditional sanity, the more able they are to perceive the illusion and pierce through it and interact with the world. If you start getting enough kinds of dangerously mentally unwell, transformative things can start to happen as well. So this is not Ben and Samara talking about realistic mental health. This is us telling a scary story where madness is a feature. So, okay.
Yeah, just want to be super clear about that.
If a human goes insane, if their mind shatters under the pressure, as you well know, their ability to pierce the illusion is sharpened. Your favorite chisels are made out of madmen. But under the right circumstances that, quite frankly, you have worked very hard to ensure never happen in this building, the madness expand in such a way and the mind bearing it shatter along the right facets that transformative illusion bending trauma can start to turn inwards and start shaping flesh. There are stories of two creatures bound together naked with their hands and feet worn down to stabbing, sharpened stubs of bone, their faces sunken into skulls. Other shapes, creatures that arise from nightmare and feed on those who dream them. And what has happened here is that something has so shattered this Bethany shell that even for all of its engineered resilience, it is falling prey to that transformative chaos that is a mind entirely disarticulated into madness. This doesn't happen by itself.
Oh, it does not. And with one arm around this Bethany, the Red Lady puts a hand on this newness that is appearing from her mouth and puts it out of its misery. Her fingernails just extend and stops it.
There is no challenge to this. This thing is far too enraptured in its own metamorphosis to be anything resembling functional, and the Red Lady's lethal hallucinogenic toxins will finish the job even if the physical damage of her claws do not.
And with that hand, she takes the ruin of Bethany's hand and holds it for a moment and takes that blood and puts it on her face the way Bethany was trying to. And she cradles what is now a corpse and keens, which is a mind-shattering screech of rage and sorrow and offense and pure, unadulterated vengeance. It is a sound that ripples out from where she is and tears the illusions from things and rocks and shatters and is just, while David has seen her do a number of things that are the most human things she's ever done.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the least. This is primal, angelic rage.
Fucking cool. You get an immediate response and then something unexpected. The response that you get immediately is in a moment of connection. David's howling metallic roar, shriek, grind noise matches the Red Lady's. And for all of his loathing of the Red Lady and for all of his hatred of what he's seeing and the inevitability probably of a conflict about it, his unreasonable, overwhelming need to annihilate whatever caused this has superseded his other thoughts. And so whatever the Red Lady does, as long as it is bent towards apocalyptic vengeance, David will be by their side. And she can hear the slithering, brassy sounds of David's illusion fading and dying underneath his own madness, his own annihilating derangements. And you know your sounds, you know your voice. You have screamed this scream in so many places. You have laid bare the truth of the world with claw and fang and song and toxin and wing and burning eye and sex and books and lies and ritual. And you have screamed this scream in so many places, not the least of which is the shattered citadel of her and at the Somme and other terrible places. And you know how it echoes throughout the illusion and beyond, and how it feels when it bounces off of places. And so when your angelic shriek, when the victory sound of that beautiful shining moment where you and the rest of them and the Archon thought that things were going to go your way, when a piece of this place clunks leadenly inside this echo, the sound of a bell made out of wood being rung, a dull, almost meaty sound. Its absence is audible. That muffled noise. And somewhere over there is a thing. And you need to find it.
Now she knows exactly where. In this moment of her keening, has David come to join her, or is he still further back?
It is difficult to determine because she just did a lot of damage to the illusion. But David is imminent. Is he next to her? Is he behind her? Is he co-stalking from another angle, but whatever it is, the inevitable angel of death kind of unavoidable disaster that is David in the full throes of his inhuman fury is coming.
Good. She gives this Bethany a kiss on the forehead and lays her down very carefully and stands up because she now knows exactly where what she's looking for is. And despite the damage to the illusion, this building itself does not seem to have changed all that much. That is what this building is and what it looks like and what its function is are largely similar within and without. And she stalks off down the hallway like it's like Jurassic Park. An impossible creature, an unstoppable force. It is coming for whatever did this.
So where is it? I'll tell you what it is, but you tell me where it is.
It is about 3 hallway sections further down. And because this is a very particular wing, and it is a wing that it started in and that it has been focusing all its attention on, going through oddly methodically. And so she knows exactly where it is and where it intends to end up, and she will catch up with it before it gets there and finishes its work.
Okay. What it is a pair of things. One of them looks generally like a Bethany. The other one we'll leave for a moment. There is a Bethany there in the cheap white gown, the shapeless, almost the only gendered part of this outfit is the fact that it is more a dress and less a tunic. But you could put any body in it and drag them through the mud and have them be found, and it would be the right clothing. And she is in... That is the thing that she started in, but she has torn it and tied it now. So there is almost a slightly kind of Greco-Roman look to it. There's pieces of it more over one shoulder, although it could be less that she did it on purpose and more that her acts of murder or self-murder tore it, and this is the shape that it needed to be for her to remain dressed as she chose to. In her hand is a piece of glass. It is that oceanic slight green of thick glass, the kind you put on the windows, the specifically thick windows that are designed to not able to be broken out, the kind that warp the light so that they can't see out clearly, so they cannot dream of anything other than nondescript blobs of green and brown. And someone has shattered this glass, and this Bethany has somehow napped, which is the process of flaking pieces off until you get an edge like you do for flint. This Bethany has napped this piece of glass into a sanity shredding dagger. and her hands are peeled back. The skeleton of her fingers is exposed, and you can see the tendons moving. And these are not hands that should be able to grip this sacrificial athame, but they do. And her hair has been torn out in clumps by other Bethanies that tried to survive being murdered by themselves. And it is twisted and caked with blood and filth, and the face is messy and dirty, and there are two perfect, clean lines of tears that have dropped perfectly from the middle of each eye and have kept them clean. And it is clear why her eyes are tearing up. They are not tears of sadness, they are tears of damage, because there is something wrong with her eyes. There is too much eye in them. It is almost like her eyes are attempting to undergo mitosis. And it is like there are... You okay?
Yeah, okay. That was the one that's like, oh wow, wowie.
And it is almost as if there is more than one set of eyes fighting inside the ocular orbit for position.
That's truly horrendous.
You're welcome.
That's real bad. Seeing this, her ultimate prey, the Red Lady engages an illusion bending ability that she has, which is, with barely a flap of her wings, she is suddenly next to this Bethany. And she grabs it by the neck and flings it back in the direction she came from. The first motion, it's rage and pain, but it's also calculated to interrupt her movement towards her ultimate goal.
You should not have been able to hear what it said as you grabbed it. But the rules that govern things like this have been broken by the both of you. They are layers of fracture here and now. And so when this Bethany says in a moment that it should not be able to, "Hello, Sasha," as it goes flying against the wall.
Turning on her heel to face the thing that she threw, the Red Lady, because this is a creature of madness, it was not of her making, but she knows madness better than any within the illusion on Elysium. She reaches forward with one hand and tugs at one of the threads outside the illusion that has made this creature what it is, and pulls at it like loose yarn to unravel a blanket to try and discover how this happened.
Roll magic.
Sure will.
Sure fucking will. Yes, chat. Everyone should be screaming Sasha ?
And that is a 15.
Nice. So we are not, because we're terrible people, we are not going to tell you everything you want to know about what's on the other end of that thread. You'll have to watch the rest of Wrath and Tears when it comes back and find the fuck out yourselves. So you pull on that thread, and you feel the texture of it. Thread is such an interesting term for these things because they are woven or spun or twisted. There is a creationary aspect to them. They are not thin, taut, slick things like a tendon. They are made and pulled carefully. They are spun. They are carded and spun into something, out of something. And when you feel the nettle prickle of this thread on your soul's fingers, you recognize it because you can still remember this sticky, prickling, burning, welt-raising kind of mind that should not be here. That is a very unwelcome surprise because usually you do a better job of cleanup than that. And as you find that thread and recognize it, one green eye and one blue eye swivel into place with like the world's worst slots machine. There's kind of a rolling, clunking, locking into place sort of vibe. And when you are holding on to that thread, you feel another tension as the other thing on the other side of that thread pulls something of itself and yanks, and it is a disconcerting inside-outside pull on self, not self, multi-layered aggression. And from the double doors behind you, thuds, collapses a avalanche of Bethany flesh. There had to be at least 12.5 placed into this. Don't forget, Samara, you can X if I go too far.
Oh no, I'm good. I'm okay. Fine. That's just terrible.
Okay. Normally I don't get you enough to make you make a face, so I'm double checking with my friend and person okay. I'm playing with and making sure that they remember that they can parachute.
Yes, we are A-okay.
It is an avalanche of flesh, and some people might recall a travel that Matthew experienced with his sisters where there was an infinity of pig slowly pulling a chain, and it has that endlessly regurgitative feel, except the things that are falling out of this mass of flesh are Bethany's. And you can watch the hair grow from flesh and the eyes and teeth and the cheekbones swell as hands shape themselves out of the mass and hit the ground and pull themselves forward. But as they pull the bulk forward, the bulk reabsorbs them. So it's not a hydra of Bethany's all distinct coming forward. It is an avalanche of Bethany's rolling and rolling like snow down a mountain. And it is 1.5 tons of deranged flesh.
It's like Akira.
Yeah. Fundamental experience.
It's funny looking back on those.
Yeah.
The red lady at that point, steps halfway around to see what the fuck that is. And her expression is not recognizable by human faces.
Okay.
There is, for those more familiar with expressions beyond the illusion, it is frustration and affrontedness and a begrudging impressiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Because someone got into her place of power and took what was hers and caused a madness so complete that it has shattered multiple realities completely. And game recognized game. That is impressive.
It is.
But it needs to be McFucking stopped.
Yeah.
So what she does is, in both directions, she flings spikes that were claws, that were fingernails, in both directions.
Mm-hmm.
That are both combat tools and tools of tearing reality. But for this, I will roll combat.
Okay.
$18.
Okie dokie. So which one do you want to do more damage to?
The singular.
The singular. Yeah, that is a theoretically bigger problem.
Yeah. It talks.
Yes. And when those needle claw knives slam into its flesh and the rotting hallucinogenic poisons start pumping into its meat, and you know from because you designed them that they're going to start to dissolve, and there will be nothing there but a neurotoxin that shows you God before it eats your brain. And what you were not expecting was the uncomfortably ecstatic roll of the eye and hip and back at the experience. Yes, I think that's adequately descriptive of that. Yes, I will describe horror more than I will describe sexual things. That's how I am. Sorry, not sorry. But the pleasure that they take in that torturous assault on their mind and self tells you that you are going to need to focus your attention. You have done damage, but you have not done enough. And the needles that sunk into the avalanche of flesh did functionally nothing. There's not enough there for there to be meat. You know, it's how do you drive meat insane? It's a hard question to ask. Hey, fix yourself.
Focus.
You're not going to. I'm just going to be blurry until it decides it wants to work more gooder.
It likes your microphone off to one side, and it occasionally decides that's super interesting.
What now, motherfucker? All right,
Almost.
fine. Yeah. It'll figure itself out in a second.
Your
So,
camera's upset by rolling waves of meat.
Yeah.
Camera's like, you don't get to see Ben anymore.
No, I mean, there we go. Remember, kids, apologize enough to your technology and it will do you better.
It's true. Be nice to your tech. It tries real hard.
Yeah. there is nothing in this world that has threatened to make me an animist more than working in manufacturing, because they have emotions, I swear. So you are probably going to need to, you are absolutely without a doubt going to need to focus on the inciter, the invader.
Oh yeah.
And however, you do have a person-shaped apocalypse that you could probably get some help from.
Yeah.
So do you want to try to get David here, or do you want him to fuck away from this?
She needs David on the other side of her. That's the really complicating factor. And so, what I think she does is, with that preternatural quickness, she is now suddenly on the other side of this Bethany and is grabbing it by the chest throat area and dragging it back to a more like there's a hallway and then there's a wider area and then it continues as a hallway. It's not like an individual room, it's just a wider kind of foyer area. And she gets it back to there.
Well, you want it to.
I want it to, yes.
Let's randomize it a little bit, though.
Sure. What should I roll for that?
Combat, unless you have a compelling argument for something else.
I think combat makes sense. Oh, all right.
Seems very meaty.
It does. That was a 19.
All right, so just keep describing then. Go on.
Yeah. She wants to get herself and it into a place that David can then pass straight through towards the Bethany meat apocalypse.
Yeah.
And while doing that, she sends a shout, which is like, because I'm currently reading The Shining, it's like The Shining, sending a single mental shout at David to give him directional. It's not with words, but it is demonstrating to him in sounds, images, flashes, that there is this thing that needs his attention, and he's going to want to see this.
The David that bursts through the door is a David on the edge of mental collapse. And all right. And when he beholds the avalanche of Bethanies, he screams in such human, terrified rejection of what he's seeing. It is bad, and I am not going to use any of the ways I just tried to describe it in my head because I don't like any of them and they gave me trouble. So it's super bad.
Let's be clear, it's real bad.
Yeah.
And David's reaction is highly reasonable.
Yes.
Regardless of how deep in the illusion or in the cult world you are, that's bad.
Yeah. No, I yellowed myself in my own head. So however, in that moment, there is also a kind of acceptance, and for better or for worse, David's ability to dehumanize things that look like Bethany solidify. We'll find out later if that was a positive or a negative effect. But what David absolutely knows in this moment, if nothing else, is that whatever this is, it needs to stop. And the layers of flashbacks in this moment I did not consider until just now. The mayhem, the twisted mayhem that made the Davids inside a burning tank, and the endless screaming of the pig beasts, and the way he has changed on the inside, and all of those moments refined down to this one. And when he attacks the avalanche of flesh, it is with a fatalistic abandon that knows that one of them will be put out of their misery by the end of this. And he's not entirely convinced that there is a better option between the two. So that's what David's doing.
So the Red Lady, and quick timeout, I am going to take the sexual element that was introduced and use that.
Okay.
I will try and be as respectful in descriptions as possible. Please X out as needed.
Go get some Hot Pockets. Go get some pizza rolls.
Hot Pockets. Yeah, go get some nice Hot Pockets and come back in a minute or two. The Red Lady knows the different types of madness, and that not all of them are that howling, screaming agony that is most often seen in a place like an asylum. And this creature that is still in some ways a Bethany showed its weakness. And the Red Lady takes those claws and drives them like needles into the Bethany's head and floods it with serotonin and dopamine and all of those positive things that happen in someone's brain when they orgasm, and takes that and introduces toxicity to it as well. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die.
Yes, indeed.
And that is what she will do to this Bethany.
That sounds like
go
magic.
ahead and roll. I think it's magic, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a 19.
All right. Roll magic one more time for me.
Sure.
And I'll tell you why in a moment as I describe what you've done.
18.
Okay. The chemical assault on this mind that is riding this Bethany, you fill the physical brain with chemicals and lights. It kind of psychic lights flash and auras flicker, and all of the things that happen all of the mental effects of a dose of those chemicals of that severity start to happen, and it is too much for the mind riding the body to endure. And it attempts to flee. It cuts bait and runs, essentially. But when you reach out to kind of to grab onto those threads and to pull it back, because it's gotten away from you one too many times and you've had your fucking fill of this, you don't get a hold of it in a way that you can drag back, but you do latch on kind of to its mental hamstrings. And if the spirit was a body, you would have shredded its Achilles tendon and crippled it in some critical way. You do not know exactly what, but there is some piece of that runaway, that rebel, and how funny is it that you used that word as a curse, that will never heal right. And now there is just a broken piece of Bethany meat in front of you, with a mind full of drugs, essentially. And you might be able to use it, you might not. But it is a question of, do you put this thing out of its misery? Okay.
Yeah, this one, as with the previous one, she lets it down as gently as she can. She lets it ride those good chemicals and then spike through the brain.
There is no challenge to this. And this body dies as quietly as it possibly could under the circumstances.
And she pries the weapon from its fingers. She'll keep that.
Mm-hmm.
She looks up to see how David's doing.
Let's see. There is no set how is David doing for the story, so let's roll some dice about it. Well, David's doing just fucking fine.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
Mr. 19. Well, he's effective. Is he okay?
Yes. Correction. Yes, he is doing a combat real good.
Yeah, he's doing a hell of a murder. And somehow he's actually managing to mostly keep it together. He says, rolling a 14 and saving those dice for werewolf. David is not okay. I mean, there is no piece of David that is okay. It is just contained, not okay. And so as he has, with terrifying mechanical efficiency, tore pieces of Bethany's away from the hole and mangled them and threw them behind him into these piles of non-functioning. It's like a butcher for mannequins. It's like a slaughterhouse of waxworks behind him, and there are heads that are blinking and their mouths are gasping like landed fish, and there are fingers that are curling, and there are muscles, like there are biceps that are no longer attached to a shoulder, and the biceps muscles are like squeezing underneath the skin, and you can see them be.
It's like I saw on Binging with Babish the other day, he killed a lobster with a knife to the dome, but because they have decentralized nervous systems, they just twitch forever, and it's awful.
Yes. Also, if you make lobster thermidor, they wave goodbye in the oven.
It keeps coming back to lobster thermidor.
I made it once in culinary school, and it's been a thing ever since. Because you cut it in half, you take out some of the guts, you mix it with some stuff, you pack it back in the body cavity, and you turn it like on its side, body cavity side up, into the oven, and you broil it. And when you broil it,
all the little tendons
the muscles contract. Yeah. So when you put it in the broiler, the big claw like waves once at you as the muscles tighten and then release. So the whole ass thing.
Oh man,
anyway.
There are a lot of reasons I don't eat seafood, but that's probably one of them.
Yeah, what's the word you used last time?
Trafe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
also
worst.
it's trafe. Anyway, so David is making relatively short work of this meat.
He wants this to be done fast.
Yeah.
This is not a kill which he will luxuriate in.
I think as he is working on that, she just walks up behind him and keeps walking beyond him, letting him do his thing, letting him deal with this. And she continues down the hallway, looking at where the blood is and searching and searching. And not unlike David, she has her mouth open so when a cat is grooming, sometimes it'll stop and it has stank face.
Yes.
And what that actually is, it's the opposite of what we think it is, because it looks like stank face, but it's actually they're accessing their Jacob's organs so they can get a deeper scent on something. Mm-hmm. And so that's how she is stalking the hall, with this slightly open kind of feline mouth. And she finds one room towards the end where the blood hasn't gotten there yet. And she opens the door and she clutches the person who was cowering on a bed to her.
That looks less loving and more covetous.
Depends on your perspective.
Okay.
But there is at least one intact Bethany.
Okay.
She looks tired, emaciated. Her hair is stringy. It's not a healthy Bethany, but it is an intact Bethany.
Yeah. Maybe there is even some kind of a physical problem that made it less inviting to the invader.
Maybe.
Something to consider for later. The screaming has stopped, however, and the sounds of industrial butchery have also faded. And for the first time in decades, the southern wing of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is silent.
The Red Lady gathers this Bethany up in her arms, Princess Carrie, or like carrying a child, and holds her very close, protective, possessive, as she walks out of the room and back towards David. And she is looking at David.
David is... So when David snaps, everything becomes okay to David. That's one of the problems that he has, is that once he has a break, there is nothing around him that can phase him, which is super useful, but also terrifying, as David is sitting on top of a majority of the flesh that he has just made no longer viable, and is like sitting on top of it the same way someone sits on like a big rock. Like if you imagine a beautiful park, and there's like a great big rock that they couldn't move because it was too heavy, so they like put some gravel around it and stuck some flowers in, and all the college kids go sit on top of the rock and like sunbathe, and everybody pretends they're not drinking beer. He's sitting like that on that rock, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Except it's a mound of Bethany's.
Yeah. And this living Bethany has nuzzled against the Red Lady, but she is clearly alive and clearly under the Red Lady's protection. And so the Red Lady continues walking towards David as if challenging. This is her, you're done now.
Yeah. Terrifyingly enough, David's response at seeing a Bethany is nothing. It is blank air. It is wind through an empty tomb. It is very possible that David has just murdered his protective instinct out of himself.
And she keeps walking. Says, it's time to go.
Fucking right it is. And he clambers down like he's a college kid on the rock, and it's time to go because the cops are coming. He's just absolutely... He's fine. Everything's fine. This is fine. He's internalized this. This is great.
Well, at least he internalized something.
Yeah.
And once they get just beyond the hallway, she turns around, and she's still holding a Bethany, and she's kind of holding the head close to her shoulder, and she makes a sound that's kind of like just, but it sends a shockwave through everything that is in the hallway, all the gore and piles of Bethany.
Mm-hmm.
To break down this illusion the way fungus breaks down flesh.
Okay.
Just that rapid putrefaction of what has been left here. And she doesn't stay to see because she knows it will do what she told it to do. And so she keeps going.
Okay. David has actually paused at one point and rummaged through the pockets of one of the orderlies for cigarettes. Like, he has actually rummaged down to this dead body that's been stabbed like 65 times in the torso, grabs the pocket, pulls the entire pocket off, and then takes the cigarettes out of the pocket and then finds matches. And goes through the elaborate process of cleaning this finger, and this thumb so that he may hold the cigarette. The rest of him is still in gore, but drawing through a wet filter is just unacceptable.
Sure. She keeps walking all the way down to the basement. And once there, she very, very, very gently puts the Bethany down within the stone doorway. So she's already in it. And turns in one direction and makes that sound again. And the various sigils and glyphs and things start to melt off the walls.
Ooh.
And then on the stone, she starts finger painting the way out.
Okay.
And once it is finished, there is that ripple of air, and the Bethany lying there vanishes. And she looks at David.
And he looks back at her, and in a perfect flip of the beginning of this story, he's just like, whatever, man, feel your feelings. Let's go.
She gestures for him to go through.
And he does. Like, finishes his cigarette, flicks it, and walks through the portal.
She stands right in front of the portal, turns around, lets out one final shh, which makes these stones start to shake. And she steps through the portal.
In years to come, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, like many of its kind, will close. Like many of its kind, it will, however, not be torn down. It will be registered as a historic landmark. Because for some fucking reason, humanity has decided that this is the great edifice that must be protected from the ravages of time. And in time, it becomes an attraction. A haunted tour. And one of the highlights of the tour is the South Wing Massacre of 1957, where one of the patients got out and killed over 100 others before disappearing, maybe being killed. They're not certain, but it is said that if you go into the basement, you can still hear the screams. And you can hear deep noises. Your little fucking EMF readers and your little micro cassettes. They don't pick up words, they just pick up low two-tone sounds and the occasional hiss that sounds like a static crackle. And most people get a little goosebumpy. They go, ooh. But every so often you get someone who has been broken, who has been fractured just the right way, who has been awakened. And to them, that droning sounds like stone singing. And that static hissing noise sounds like something angry. And is there anything else you'd like to add, Samara, or are you content?
There are rumors that someone escaped off into the night. there are legends that start to crop up, urban legends about the inmate that could have done it. The basement is strangely empty. The room directly below the foyer is so big it feels like it should have been used for something, but there's nothing there except a very, very, very thick layer of dust. Thicker than anywhere else. Like it wasn't used in decades. And when you go down there with your EMF readers, it feels like that dust makes everything too quiet. It blankets everything in silence. Unless you're just the right person to hear it.
And I think that's where we're going to leave it. That's pretty much it. So guys, thank you very much for coming to another fantastic episode of Wrath and Tears. We will see you in 2 weeks, and somehow we're going to have to fucking top this. So Samara, I guess we'll have a planning meeting. Right? So if you at all like Wrath and Tears, you're going to want to be here in 2 weeks, because if things go the way I want them to, not only will there be story, there will be revelations. So yeah, hold on to your butts. But that is all from us, and we thank you very much. Drink your water. It's hot everywhere. Drink your water, take care of yourself, and be safe when you can and be brave when you can't. So we will talk to you later.